Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, January 13th. Another storm coming, so let's hope that's not prescient. I am joined by my two amigos, Josh Molina of Newshawk and Nick Welsh of The Independent. Thanks, guys, for taking the time. At the beginning of the week, it kind of looked like the lead story that we'd be talking about is this scoop that Josh had about Deborah Schwartz lifting a rug on video. But then we got really, really whacked with this storm, and more on the way, and came through it pretty well. I just want to spend a couple minutes talking about that because Nick Welsh, his favorite coverage is of natural disasters because he hasn't done enough in his career. And every time one comes along, he's got his hand up. Let me do it. All right, a couple things. Let's start with the very local, Nick. There was a lot of fear of, obviously, I mean, the storm happens on the 5th anniversary to the day of the deadly debris flow we had. But we came through it pretty good. The debris basins are full, but the National Guard's there, empty them. The ring nets prove their worth. What do you think?
It's a really interesting split. So the headline that we had at one point, which was no one dead, no one missing, and no one injured, is still true. I think at the city council yesterday, they were talking, there were no red tagged homes. There's only 5 yellow tagged, but that's for the city of Santa Barbara. So the good news is we came through this thing amazingly unscathed. But the bad news is I'm hearing from people on the 4th floor of the county building that this might be the most expensive natural disaster the county's ever had in terms of infrastructure damage, in terms of road damage.
Henry, stop.
That, you know what, we are so focused on the trauma of Montecito and the Montecito narrative that we are missing what's happening up in Guadalupe. We're missing where 47 people have been rendered homeless overnight because of this, and there's not a lot of motels or hotels up in Guadalupe for them to go. You got Orchid, you have a big sinkhole in the street. You've got a levee in Santa Maria that burst, and what that means, I should know a lot more than I do. And then you have people in Solvang who've never had to deal with flooding before, now all of a sudden freaking out, like, what do we do? So, Refugio Road, off limits. Paradise Road, forget about it. Gibraltar Road, right? If you want to go off to the side, that's the road to ride because it is like, do not go there. And these are roads these aren't like a quick tar job. This is some serious work they're looking at.
And the 154.
And 154, 154 maybe should be retired.
Well, I mean, it must be bad because the governor, Prince Gavin, his own self, is coming to our very little burg here today to talk about it and to urge more federal help, relief help.
It's an interesting situation there. I mean, I'm sorry, I just interrupted you.
No, that's
I'm
used to it. It's been happening to me for many decades.
But again, I have heard from people on the 4th floor that they have told the governor or his planners, dude, you might want to go look at Guadalupe. You might want to go up in the northern part of the county where people are really feeling it.
Where's he going to be?
He's going to be at Randall Road, which is in Montecito, and Randall Road is sort of a miracle story. After the last debris flow disaster in Montecito, 7 or 8 homeowners, I should know the numbers better, basically said they would sell their homes to the county.
All but one, as I recall.
All but one, way below market value, what they could have gotten on the market.
Including our friend Vicky Riskin.
This huge new catch basin. It's going to be the biggest debris basin we have. Now, it was brand new in time for this flood. And just to step back for a second, when the flood was first announced, we were thinking 2 to 5 inches in the coast and 4 to 8 in the mountains. What we learned yesterday is that what we got in the mountains was 17 inches.
Yeah.
So it was not just a record for volume, it was a record for intensity. So Randall Road is at 50%. So they got 150 National Guard people coming where? To Montecito, not to Guadalupe, not to Orchid, but to Montecito, and they're going to help clear out the debris basins, because we have a storm coming this weekend.
I'll bet you $20 Gavin manages to work in a fundraiser while he's there. Josh, in terms of the city, I watched these daily press conferences they had for the first few days of it. And you know who really impressed me was the mayor. He just got up there. He was very factual. He didn't try to hog the limelight, and he was honest. He said, "Look, you know, we got through it. Our infrastructure did what it was supposed to do, but we don't have the capacity for a storm like that." What's the fallout from that? I mean, a lot of flooding on the Lower East Side. The wharf was closed. Lower West Side. How did the city do?
I mean, the city's really proud of the job that they did. They feel as though they did a great job responding, letting people know of what was to come, and being there to do what they can. Now, we have obviously those photos, those images of people's cars being flooded and mud on the road, and those cars being totaled. And I think the thinking there is, you know, no, we expected a certain amount of rain, and we got a lot more rain and a lot more intensity, and that we did what we could. Our infrastructure is old, but we were there and prepared and able to prevent any major disaster. And they were thankful it wasn't super windy, because trees falling, you know, that's a significant thing, and that didn't happen. And it might have been Rebecca Bjork or Chris Miles, or, you know, the fire.
Who's the public works director now?
I'm blanking on his name. Yeah, might have been him. But one of them said, you know, there's only so much we can do, and residents need to have a little common sense in terms of, like, don't leave your car there on the Lower West Side, which is a pool. And so, you know, there was that sort of sentiment. It's like, we did the best job we could, and we all should all be celebrating how well we did. So there's obviously issues with storm drainage and sewers. They're aware of that, but I think overall everyone's pretty happy with the response.
Do you think it'll lead to, Nick, you were telling me yesterday about a storm back in the 19th century you covered, which led to new storm drains, bigger storm drains. I mean, is there any talk about any of that we would make any changes, or is this just like a one-off? We had 11 inches up here at Old Nag Estates. I mean, it was a lot of rain.
That's a lot. No. Answer is I don't know. No, I think it was the storm in the 90s, the big one. And I walked from my home on the west side to work downtown, and you know, the water level was up to my nipples. I mean, and you know, it was
overshare.
It was really something else. And now they changed the storm drains, and I walked down this week, and it was, my feet got wet on the downslope. But if you're on the lowlands, you definitely felt it. And there are some unhappy people who thought they should have gotten more notice. And it was interesting at the event that Josh referenced there yesterday at the council. Rebecca Bjork, who is the city's administrator and former public works director.
Still new on the job.
And you can see Rebecca had probably gotten about 2 minutes of sleep in the last 2 weeks, and nobody has worked harder. And she wasn't really in the mood to hear any discouraging words or any critical commentary. And it was sort of like, you know, we warned people, and if they didn't listen, that's not on us.
Yeah, maybe they need some specific communication line about don't leave your car on the street.
But you know, it's easy to say for a lot of people, they don't have any other place to put their cars. Now, if you have a big estate and you have lots of parking space on site, that's one thing. But a whole lot of renters, which is the Lower East Side predominantly, where are they going to go?
Yeah, good point. And then, of course, it raises the let's go cosmic for a moment. Does this mean that our 1,000-year drought is over? What do you think?
No.
No.
I would say no.
But the thing about Kachuma is really remarkable. What was it? It went from 36% to 84% or something in basically one day. That's amazing. But no, you're right. The drought is not over. We're still in it. The San Joaquin water table is so badly overdrawn. The Colorado River, which supplies a lot of Southern California, not over. And
it gives us some breathing space.
Yes, it does. But the other question, and Josh, this it's kind of interesting about the build now, build fast, build a lot housing advocates. They never really address the lack of water, and they don't really address flood control either. And these are two big issues about water on both ends that you really wonder if we had 30,000 people, how's that going to all work out water-wise? Anyway, my MVP for the thing is Kevin Taylor, the Montecito fire chief, who I think used that study that the Pat McElroy, Gwynn Lurie Resilience Task Force put together about the history of these kinds of things, and had people going specific addresses that needed to really evacuate, because not everybody evacuated, even though they said you should. But I thought pretty remarkable. Anybody stand out to you in the public sector? Josh, you mentioned Rebecca, or I guess Nick mentioned Rebecca.
Well, I mean, to echo Nick, Rebecca was phenomenal at this meeting. I mean, this was an engineer who said, I'm done with the politics. I mean, Oscar kept going back and forth about warnings to the west side, warnings to the west side. And Rebecca was just like, I'm done. We did an amazing job. So I don't know. Obviously, Kevin Taylor, Montecito, the thick of it. The city did a great job. Rebecca Bjork was really impressive in terms of her handling of it. I think that maybe there could be some communication to the people on the west side. The neighborhood there's turnover, there's students. You might not know that when it rains really hard, instantly it turns into a swimming pool, because that's like totally. If you didn't see it before, you would never think that would happen. So maybe there's some mechanism there. I don't know how they did do their outreach, but there's people who are kayaking to their cars because that was the only way they can get home.
Which the KYT reporter kept calling a canoe, to my annoyance.
I think really the whole system, all the different agencies, this is a mutual aid of all the different agencies really came together quite impressively. And you listen to Fire Chief Males, and he could not have been more clear in his description of how it happened and what happened. What happened is it came down a lot harder and faster and sooner than they thought, and the weather did not behave according to prediction. And they were constant. Twice Bill Brown, the sheriff, said he went to go make a statement at a public event about evacuation, and 1 minute beforehand got information that said no shelter in place twice. So they were zigging and zagging, and still it managed to be nobody died. And when you look at the headlines across the state, what was it, 19? I don't know what the numbers are now, but
well, okay, so job well done with the major caveat of North County, parts of North County, which really got hammered, and which obviously we don't spend a lot of time talking about because we don't have few. Maybe we do. I got a guy from the Netherlands that signed up as a subscriber to YouTube. So that's good. Yeah, you know, as long as I'm on a tangent, you know, the thing about the kayak, the guy in the kayak, I mean, that was all over the news forever. But it's not that unusual. I remember the first winter I was here, Mike Eliason got, you know, it was the same thing. East side was lower, east side was flooded. Got a picture of a guy on his surfboard in the middle of the street. And I thought, holy cow, that's amazing. I put it on page one and everybody's like, oh, that happens all the time. That's no big deal. So anyway.
Well, there's a reason why it's called Salsapuerta Street. Salsapuerta Street, that means get out if you can. And the reason it's called that is because that area is essentially a glorified reclaimed lagoon that is prone to flooding.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Deborah Schwartz, former longtime planning commissioner, former candidate for mayor on a lot of boards around town, daughter of Naomi Schwartz, of course. And Josh, you had this scoop about her and shoplifting. What's that all about?
Well, November 17th, Deborah Schwartz was seen on video at Star Rug Cleaners, seemingly putting a rug in her tote bag and not letting the clerk know. And it was all caught on surveillance video. And she didn't bring the rug back. The owner reached out to her and said, hey, we have you on video putting this rug in your bag and leaving, and you didn't pay for it, and you didn't talk to us about it, so bring it back. That was November 18th. He filed a police report, and police department came down. He didn't press charges. It wasn't until last Wednesday or Thursday that she brought it back after he had said, I'm going to get other people involved. And so she brought it back. He just wanted the rug back. It's the rug is supposed to be between $800 and $1,500. So
that type of rug, that Navajo thing, it's a thing. I did a major Google investigation of.
It's a Germantown Navajo rug,
Yes.
you know, created in Pennsylvania and brought over here. So the story is Deborah Schwartz, you know, she's like this brilliant planning commissioner for 12 years, really good on process and thorough, and, you know, has a following in town. Of course, her mother is Naomi Schwartz, the late Naomi Schwartz, who is, you know, very admired. And then she ran for council, mayor, and you know, she has not won any of those seats. So it's like mind-boggling, like what is going on here? I think what feedback I got a lot of was that's really sad. People felt sorry for the situation. But my sense of it as a journalist was, I don't know if a lot of people walked in and took a rug and didn't tell anyone if they would have been arrested.
Yeah. What do you think? You know, if it was Josh, light-fingered Josh, who went in and picked up something, or James Joyce, for example, Nick, I have a feeling they'd both be arrested and put in jail. Was there a white lady privilege going on here?
Well, I can only tell you what the owner of Star Rugs told me. He said, I would do that for anybody, no matter what their socioeconomics.
He did not press charges. He
did not press charges. You know, you can't see the situation and not have that question occur to you. You know, why do you want to, you know, anyway, it was a sad, you know, it was.
Well, your father, you know, when we used to compete head to head with the San Francisco Examiner, you know, if they had a scoop, you could do one of two things. You could either advance it or kind of knock it down. Yours seemed like a combination of those two things, Nick. You talked to John Tyng, the lawyer, who, I mean, I was scratching my head about how he's representing Deborah Schwartz, because the last time he surfaced, wasn't he representing Christy Lozano in court over something?
Well, John Tyne is sort of a man for all seasons around town. And he is a lawyer, he's a real estate guy. He's got his fingers in more pies than he has fingers. And he is a close friend and business associate with a guy named Ray Maboob, who has been mentioned on this show many times, who's a major downtown property owner and was a strong supporter of Deborah Schwartz early on. You know, when Deborah ran for mayor, she was the first one out the gate, and she positioned herself as the I am not Kathy Murillo candidate for people in the business community. And they all rallied behind her, a lot of them rallied behind her. And because at that point, Randy Rouse, former council member and owner of the Paradise Cafe, hadn't jumped in. And Deborah is, as Josh said, extremely smart. Sometimes she is quick to let everybody know how smart she is and doesn't win friends in her demeanor or her brevity on the planning commission. And those are not attributes that serves her well politically.
Yeah.
And she got clobbered. I mean, she came ahead, she beat Boat Rat Matt, but she and Boat Rat Matt and Mark Whitehurst, the three of them together got 10% of the vote.
Yeah,
So
brought up the rear.
It should be noted also that Deborah resigned from her position as treasurer of the Santa Barbara County Democratic Women, which is an influential group that supports women who want to run for politics. She did not resign, however, until the story was about to break.
Well, she didn't return the rug until you started asking questions, right?
Well, she returned the rug on a Thursday, and I did the story on a Friday, and it was, you know, synonymous with the store owner saying he was going to get others involved. Although, as I read in the Nick story, John Tyne said that was just coincidental. So
yeah, coincidence, perhaps. You be the judge. So is this just a one-off or more to come?
You know, I think that as far as, you know, it's kind of a done deal. It happened. She's off the Dem Women board. I think she's on the Santa Barbara Beautiful board, and she's on other boards in town. I don't know if they're planning to do anything, but I think in terms of the story had an incredible interest, but it's sort of over with unless something else happens.
Hey, Nick, let's pull the curtain away from the guy behind it here for a second. I mean, it's a plain fact. Everybody had the video, but nobody published it. Why?
Well, it didn't seem necessary. And, I had my reasons, which I have expressed to you privately, and I don't want to go on. I have concerns of what the implications would be.
Yeah. Okay.
And she returned it. And if it turns out, that there's other, instances like this that surface, maybe we'll revisit it.
But John Tyne told you there were not, correct?
That's not precisely correct. It's not exactly what he said. I asked him a very specific question, and he denied a very specific question. He did not.
A different question.
Yeah.
No. All right, let's leave it there. Josh, this Paseo Nuevo piece you had about the lease and what's happening with it and everything, that's kind of a big deal. And what struck me was, you kind of have the commercial real estate people driving the car and the city just kind of trailing along on an electric bike or something like that. Why isn't the city more forceful and involved with this?
People are in positions and they have titles, and depending on who's in that position, you see different kinds of actions. And Jason Harris is the economic development manager, and I talked to him, I interviewed him, and he's very much we're a passenger in this conversation. We're observing it. We're watching it closely. We want to partner. We'll do what we can, but we're not going to take the wheel. And the observers and the business community and the commercial real estate people are saying, what's wrong with you? This thing is going to be sold for a bottom barrel price as far as malls go. And why doesn't the city try to come together to work with somebody, put a bid in, put a team together to acquire this? Because the challenge is the mall, of course, is not what it once was. Macy's and Nordstrom are at the corners. They used to be there. They're not there. We don't know what's going to happen. Offices, a demo of the Macy's building. The mall has struggled, the interior of the mall. And so people want to take this back, and they see this as some sort of a redevelopment moment bigger than the State Street master plan.
Well,
And
it
if
was
you-
interesting that Dave Davis weighed in on it. He's a former everything who's now leading the State Street master plan. Nick, some people are saying that the whole thing ought to be housing. Is that going to happen?
Who knows? I think it's very clear. I would say that the city needs to be playing a more aggressive role and having a more a louder seat at the table, if you can say that. But it also needs to be acknowledged that when the mall was built, there was a thing that existed called the redevelopment agency. And the redevelopment agency is what financed the construction of that mall. That redevelopment agency, like every other redevelopment agency in the state of California, no longer exists, thanks to Governor Jerry Brown, who abolished them. So a key funding tool that would be necessary for the city to have any crowbar in terms of leverage does not exist. So they're not going into a gunfight with a knife. They're going into a gunfight with a squirt gun. They'll have jets. And so they have the moral persuasion and leadership, but they don't have a lot of money they can bring down on the table. So that does.
Well, don't they have, I don't know, permitting and regulatory authority?
Yeah.
Well, the thing that they have is power to extend the lease. So the issue is that nobody sees it as an attractive thing to buy because the lease ends in 2046. And in order for them to be able to, whoever buys it, invest in it and have it have a long-term payoff, they want a 99-year lease. And the city was trying to do that by trying to create a development agreement a few years ago, who ironically, Deborah Schwartz and the Planning Commission, but led by Deborah, killed it because they thought that the city should be getting more out of this development agreement than what the previous mall owners were offering. So nothing ever happened. It stayed status quo. So the power the city has, according to Davis and these other individuals, is you can determine whether to extend this lease. And in that negotiation, you can ask for a lot of things. You can ask for it to be housing, which is what the city wants. You can ask for all of these in exchange for extending the lease. But instead, what's happening, at least as it seems, is that they're just kind of watching. The mall owners, it's some investment firm, Alliance Bernstein, they are looking to sell this thing, and a couple of national mall retail outlets are looking to buy it.
Well, because the previous owner or operator defaulted on their mortgage, right?
Right.
Yeah, they just gave it back. So
well, maybe Jim and Matt Taylor, who are trying to redevelop the Kumba Mall and build 685 units of housing out there, maybe they can put together with their hedge fund connections a package.
Well, it's interesting. Now we got La Cumbra is real hot, and now Paseo Nuevo. I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, if you step back from it, that's two big chunks of land, and it has been, a source of revenue as well. Or they both have been.
The other thing is, and what Nick alluded to earlier with these individuals who own property downtown, they're scared that La Cumbra Plaza is going to become the hub of the city, and Paseo Nuevo is going to continue to wither, which is going to further hurt State Street and further make it less appealing for people to go downtown and for people to open up storefronts. So these things are different, but they are connected. And there's concern of like, let's kill the Taylor project because we want downtown because that's where we own property. And so it's all intertangled, and it's a very dynamic time at the city.
I mean, I think what City Hall can do right now is make it more attractive for developers to build housing downtown and encourage housing by regulations and parking requirements and things like that. You know, I think once that train really starts moving, it may infect Paseo Nuevo.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Wow. Okay, Nick, we got 2 oil spills that are ongoing. Why can't they be cleaned up or stopped?
You know, it's old oil.
This is which one?
Well, both of them. One is the Toro Canyon Creek, and it's the old open face oil pit well that was drilled in 1882. And they've never really figured out how to control it. They can't control it. They can't plug it. What they can do is they can collect the oil and sell it like everybody else sells oil until it runs out. But that hasn't happened yet. And in the meantime, you have the district attorney suing the county of Santa Barbara for documents to see who screwed up in terms of the cleanup response for a spill that took place 2 years ago.
What about the other one?
The other one is a oil sheen off the coast of Summerlin, and what I was told, nobody knows what old oil well it came from. So Summerlin is where the oil industry started in Santa Barbara. It's where offshore oil started in California, and nobody knows where this one started. So it's kind of hard to know what to do.
Wow. Yeah, collecting it and selling it sounds like a good idea to me. I mean, I don't know how you do that, but gee whiz, it's just, I mean, it's not pouring out, but it's just seeping out, right? I mean, and
I can't remember the last time I reported on it. It was like 30 gallons a day or something like that.
Yeah, well, that ain't nothing.
It's not nothing.
Yeah. And then Josh, kind of a surprise at the Santa Barbara Unified School District meeting last night, the open seat, which occurs because Laura Capps moved to the Board of Supervisors midway through her school board term. So it's for 2 years, and then you got to be on the ballot if you want to keep it. But it went to a fellow named Bill Banning, who nobody had on their bingo card at the start of this, although I did predict last week to Kate Ford that this would happen. How did he end up? Yeah, I mean, you got all this talk about diversity and equity and inclusion, and they end up with the old white guy.
I got to tell you, Jerry, I was at the meeting last night, and it was like the Jerry Roberts fan club. Sitting in the back row, Kate Ford, Moni DeWitt, Sherry Ray, and they all say great things about you. And
that's because Newsmakers is a great advocate for literacy and for the science of reading method in our schools.
Exactly.
But I digress.
I wish you were there. This was a really intriguing meeting. These appointment processes are always sort of like watching them try to bake a cake right here without any ingredient or without a recipe. They're just kind of throwing it together. They picked Bill Banning, Wendy Sims Moten, Virginia Alvarez. He was their #1 pick, and they wanted somebody who could hit the ground running. They wanted somebody.
He's a former superintendent of Goleta Union, correct?
Former superintendent of the Goleta Union School District, and he is really well-versed in education and finance and budget and knows how things work. And he's retired, and he's going to do 2 years. And they really thought he was going to be a strong, steady presence on the board at a time when they need it. So what they did was everybody ranked their top 4, and then from there they narrowed it down. Bill Banning was Alvarez and Sims Moten's #1. And Gabe Escobedo's #1 was Moni DeWitt, and board member Rose Munoz's #1 was Crystal Farmer Seacar. So from there, they did a lot of negotiation. They could have just called it for Crystal Farmer Seacar because she was in the top 4 of everybody, but they didn't. Instead, they decided to talk about whether people wanted to move around and shift people. And so that's what they did. And it was really interesting. Wendy Sims Moten made a case for, she said, Crystal Farmer Seacar, another applicant, Jackie Inda, great in the community, great activists, really powerful, really influential. And that maybe they should stay in those roles because that's where they do the most amount of work. And to take them away from that and put them on a board, they may not be as effective. That was Wendy Sims Moten's sort of argument for why not to pick those 2 individuals who some might say would have been good picks, and to bring diversity, another layer of diversity onto that board. So there was that. Eventually they took a 5-minute break or a 10-minute break. Gabe changed his mind. He said, Moni's great, but I can go for Banning. And Rose Munoz said, I can go for Banning as well. And so they picked him, and it was essentially we think he's the most qualified for the position of board member.
Yeah, well, putting aside the, identity politics for a moment, I mean, they've lost Lori, yeah, but I think, as a pedagogic matter, the loss of Kate Ford is greater because, she's a professional educator. That's her career.
And Kate Ford, is a former superintendent, so you got one.
Yeah, you got somebody with some chops in the subject area, I think, going on there.
And I think there's 2 other points. Is that I do suspect what Josh is intimating here, that there was anybody but Crystal element to it. Is probably true that, Crystal Seagard is a very well-known activist in the healing justice, Black Lives Matter
She's a
movement.
disruptor. She really is a political.
And she's not afraid to mix it up. And I think that there was some apprehension about that on the school board, and they really didn't want to deal with that. And you've got a guy here who is like sort of the perfect safe choice. So you're not really rejecting her, you're going for the safe choice. The other thing you have to remember is that isn't that the same name as the Incredible Hulk? So you have,
That's
Bruce Banner.
Bruce Banner.
No Banning, sorry. That was a bit of a stretch.
I think Bill Banning plays second base for the Marlins, I think.
Okay, there we go. Anyway, I thought it was a play it safe move, and again, if you only got somebody for 2 years, you want somebody who knows the ropes. So it's not just being safe. It's probably a smart.
So did he say he will not run in 2 years?
Well, he doesn't live in the district, and in order to run again, you'd have to live in the district. But to serve out Caps's term, which was before district elections, you don't have to. So no, but it's sort of implied. I was surprised. There's a candidate named Julian Sarafian who didn't get much support. I think he got one in the top 4, but calls himself an influencer and worked on Emily Zacharias's campaign, is tied to the Democratic Party. So it was interesting to see who got support and who did it. Celeste Barber did not get any support. And so a wide range of people.
How did Carolyn do?
Caroline's name didn't come up last night in the conversation. So I don't think that's a surprise to anyone who knows that board and knows Caroline.
So it's a lot of. It's basically a new board. So who was the one who was driving the process?
Well, Wendy and Virginia were the only ones who were there. Rose and Gabe were remote, and so it's really hard to be a power broker remotely. So I would say Wendy really made the case for Bill Banning and saying that this is what we need. We need this exactly right now. And Virginia also to some degree. And so they wielded the power. And all I know is after the 10-minute break, it was unanimous. So there's public process for you.
Yeah.
No
transparent.
No Brown Act violation there. Okay. we're over, but I do want to call everyone's attention to next column this week, which is nationally, it connects the national to the local in a classic way. The elevation of Kevin McCarthy to the speakership of the House of Representatives, God spare us, has a couple of local angles. One representative voted for him, one against. Nick, just real quick, talk about that.
Well, again, it was sort of a massive contortion act to try to find a local hook. And Matt Gaetz, who really was the fire breather who led the charge against him until
I would have
the
said
bitter
mouth
end.
breather, but that's okay.
He's a Florida, what's that?
I would have said mouth breather.
Oh, yeah, Matt. Anyway, he's a congressman from Florida. He married a woman in Santa Barbara 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. She is at that time, she was an executive with Appeal, which is a Goleta-based company that extends the shelf life of produce. And her father is a major donor to Trump, and he was in the midst of a big sex trafficking investigation by the Department of Justice.
Not her father, Matt Gaetz was.
Matt Gaetz, her husband, her betrothed, and that investigation has now been sort of called off. There'll be nothing to it, but so that was on one, and the other was our friend Ryan Zinke, who also married a woman from Santa Barbara. Ryan was a former Department of Interior secretary under Trump, and now he's a congressman from Montana. In his district, people say, you don't live here, you live in Santa Barbara. He's here so much. He had a great line, which I wanted to quote, which was, during the deliberations, he said, while you're in it, from the distance, it looks chaotic. When you're in it, it is. And I think that pretty much summed it up.
Yeah, the most interesting factoid in your piece, I thought, was Zinke putting his ranger hat on backwards. That was, I can't unsee that one. All right, Josh, who you got on the podcast?
Well, Jerry, I'm still in high-level negotiations with my next guest, so we'll have to keep your audience in suspense until Monday.
Oh, wow. Sounds good. And Nick, our friend Laura Bianchi claiming that the SBCAG informs all of us that January 19th will be the first ever Electric Bike Safety Awareness Day. I imagine there's a lot of excitement at the Independent, people preparing advanced packages on that one. Is that going to be a cover?
I'm going to be taking the governor off my electric bike motor so I can go even faster on it and terrorize people on State Street.
All right. Even more than they already are by the bicyclists. Okay. Thank you guys. Nick Welsh, Josh Molina for taking the time. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time on Newsmakers.